Once upon a time, in a kingdom far, far away, there lived a beautiful princess named Snow White. With her skin as white as snow, lips as red as blood, and hair as black as ebony, she was the fairest of them all. Despite her beauty and kindness, Snow White's life was not easy. Her wicked stepmother, the queen, was jealous of her and sought to be rid of her. One day, to escape the queen's jealousy, Snow White fled into the depths of the forest. She wandered through the woods, lost and frightened, until she stumbled upon a charming little cottage. The cottage seemed to glow with a warm, inviting light, and Snow White, feeling both curious and hopeful, decided to knock on the door. To her surprise, the door opened on its own, revealing a cozy interior filled with charming furniture and delightful decorations. It was as though the cottage was expecting her. Snow White stepped inside and found everything perfectly tidy, yet it appeared as if no one had lived there for a long time. She looked around and saw a table set with 7 tiny plates, 7 tiny cups, and 7 tiny chairs. Snow White realized this must be the home of 7 dwarfs, and feeling both exhausted and hungry, she decided to rest. She took a bite from each plate, sipped from each cup, and then climbed into one of the tiny beds to sleep. When the 7 dwarfs returned home that evening, they found Snow White asleep in their bed. The dwarfs were miners who worked in the diamond mines deep in the forest. Their names were Doc, Grumpy, Happy, Sleepy, Bashful, Sneezy, and Dopey. Despite their initial surprise, they quickly grew fond of Snow White, and she explained her plight to them. Doc, the leader of the dwarfs, said, "You can stay with us, Snow White. We will protect you from the wicked queen." Days turned into weeks, and Snow White and the dwarfs lived happily together. Snow White kept their home tidy, cooked delicious meals, and filled their lives with joy and laughter. However, the queen discovered that Snow White was still alive. Disguised as an old peddler woman, she visited the cottage while the dwarfs were at work and tricked Snow White into eating a poisoned apple. As Snow White took a bite, she fell into a deep sleep, a sleep so deep it seemed she was dead. When the dwarfs returned, they were heartbroken. They could not bear to bury her, so they placed her in a glass coffin in the forest, where her beauty and purity could be seen by all. One day, a prince who had heard tales of Snow White's beauty and kindness came to the forest. When he saw her lying in the glass coffin, he was struck by her beauty and felt an overwhelming sadness at her plight. He leaned down and kissed her gently, breaking the spell of the poisoned apple. Snow White's eyes fluttered open, and she saw the prince before her. "Who are you?" she asked softly. "I am Prince Charming," he replied. "I have heard of your beauty and your kindness, and I am honored to meet you." The dwarfs rejoiced as Snow White stood up, alive and well. She thanked the prince and the dwarfs for their love and protection. The prince then took Snow White to his castle, where they were married in a grand celebration, attended by all the creatures of the forest. Snow White never forgot the kindness of the 7 dwarfs and often visited them in the Enchanted Cottage. The cottage itself remained a place of magic and wonder, a symbol of the strength of friendship and the power of love. And so, Snow White and her prince lived happily ever after, their hearts forever grateful for the Enchanted Cottage and the 7 dwarfs who had saved her life.